Hunting or Bust, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan in Chapter 40, Making It Back. Ruby's shaking voice whimpered as her entire frame trembled with apprehension and dread. Her silver eyes had constricted into pinholes as she looked down in panic. This isn't happening, this isn't happening, this isn't happening, this isn't happening. It's happening, little sister. Can't deny that. Yang snaked her arm around her sister's slim form to comfort her. Best to just bite the bullet and prepare for the worst. But I don't want the worst, Yang. I know, but what can we do? I've made plans, Nora interjected, getting the two sisters' attention, while John sat beside her with clear focus on her planning. She opened her scroll and showed her friends her rudimentary plans. Now, most of them revolve around distractions to waste time, so we all have a part to play. John's gonna cause a scene during the class to stop everything. The scraggly blonde nodded proudly. I've got some moves that can definitely get people's attention. He tells me that if he tries, he can lay on the floor and yodel while his body spasms like a gecko that's been hit with a shock baton. Nora looked across the table. Ruby, can you overreact to his condition and make everyone stop what they're doing to come look? Absolutely. I grew up with Yang and Swai. She proudly thumped her chest. I'm a natural at overblowing little things and getting everyone's attention. Good to know. Yang, you think you can start some fires? Yeah, I can do that, I guess. All right. She looked back over the pictures and critical points on the table she had marked. Now, in order to bring in the stampede of animals, I have ready weed need worms, cat food, dog food, honey for bears, and raw meat for the sharks. Kiba, you're good with animals. I think you can convince these guys to work with us. The suit boy looked between the cabal and down at Nora's scroll. He skeptically looked at the wide-eyed ginger inside. Nora, I'm good with animals, but I'm pretty sure I can't convince them to charge into Beacon just to act as a distraction. Plus, it sounds like a really stupid idea. Nora narrowed her eyes, scowled at her friend disappointedly. Oh, so that's how you feel. Very well, can't force you to do anything you don't want to do. Make sure to at least pull the knives out of our backs when you get the chance, but whatever. Back to my stupid plan. Kiba just blinked silently at her escalating voice before shaking his head. You're not gonna guilt trip me into doing it either, are you? Oh, okay. She turned to the other end of the table with an innocent expression. Ren, I'm not starting any fires, faking any debilitating injuries, or dressing up like a giant sloth to hold up traffic in the hallways. They all looked towards Nora for a response. The exuberant girl silently stared at her friend before looking down at her scroll, angrily swiping away one of the plans she had stored. She didn't respond or react in any vocal manner, which was already very unusual for the very expressive girl. She leveled a spiteful glare at her best friend before pouting and crossing her arms indignantly. Blake and Weiss looked at their partners stoically before the boathead girl grabbed their attention. You're not really going to go to these lengths to avoid the tests, are you? Yang gave an uncertain shrug, but Ruri was adamant on following the plan. Of course we are. If we don't, then we'll be stuck in the worst possible outcome. This is the week we've been dreading, the horrors and dread of a semester, the purest evil of school. It's finals, you dunce. Weiss rubbed her temple, shaking her head and letting her ponytail bob around. It's supposed to be stressful. We take shortened classes, finish our finals, and then next Monday, there's an assembly before the break. That's what the last week of semester is supposed to be like. I know that. My dad and uncle are teachers. I know that better than anybody. Ruby looked traumatized, remembering her past experience with the last week of school in her household. The studying, the cramming, the expectation. I knew you should have started studying earlier, but I'm not mad. I'm disappointed looks, like the one you're giving me right now. Ruby broke down and Yang patted her back emphatically, doing her best to keep her own lengthy experience of getting called out by her family under wraps. Weiss sighed. I know that was played for a sob story, but it still baffles me that you can be so careless with your schoolwork when you grew up with two educators like that. The last Ruby's face disappeared behind her arms, and she moaned sadly. Pierre looked at her leader pleadingly. I promise to help you study, so please don't flop around on the floor like a dying animal. Yeah, okay, but it's not just us. A lot of kids will be screwed by the finals. People who haven't studied, people who can barely take the test. Nora tried to rationalize her plans and looked around the table to find support. She turned to one corner of it. Sasuke, you get it right? Can you even take the test with your hands? She immediately cut herself off as the whole table hushed from the still sensitive topic. A few of them looked over at the taciturn Uchiha, who only then realized that they had looked over at him. John, Pira, and Ren looked at Nora with disappointment as she lowered her head. I'm sorry, I kind of forgot. What? Sasuke looked around. What did she say? Nothing, Tenten answered her partner. But did you get everything worked out with Linda about the finals? He gave a small nod and looked at his bandaged hands. He closed and opened them slowly. I can do the multiple choice questions, but the essay ones cost too much strain. There's a possibility I'll have to orally present them to the professors after class instead. Oh god, that sucks. Yang bemoaned on his behalf. I'm sorry to hear that, but hey, talking might be easier than writing, so that's a plus. Sasuke's expression didn't shift from her attempt to encourage her as she reeled back. She drummed her fingers over the tabletop before snapping them with an epiphany. Hey, we should all get together for a study group, cover all our bases. Plus we got some of the smartest nerds in our year on our team, so if they work together. Yang noticed twice near her glare before the Harris quietly fumed, staring down at her plate. The table went quiet again as some quick looks darted between the annoyed Shni and the silent Uchiha. It was so silent that since Sasuke had come back, he had been far less energetic and much less outspoken than he was before. Plus, he and Weiss were not conversing as much as they did before the accident. Not at all. Yang lowered her hand and coughed awkwardly at the sudden tension in the air. She noticed Ruby freeze behind her and leaned into her ear. Every step is a landmine. I know, Ruby whispered back before faking a big encouraging smile. It didn't seem to have any effect on her partner, who still just looked at her food like she was waiting for it to burst up in flames. A distraction would be heavenly right now. Just then, Ruby felt her scroll vibrate in her pocket. She pulled it out and smiled with glee at the message. It's from Naruto. She smiled and quickly opened up the viewer. Look up. Ruby blinked in confusion before following the request. She craned her head back to look up at the cafeteria ceiling. After a few seconds of staring up at the roof, she looked back down, only to find the cookie and brownie she was saving for her lunch was gone. Made you look? Ruby realized the others were looking behind her and turned in her seat. She was met with the sight of Naruto dressed in school uniform and an orange bandana with a half-eaten cookie in one hand and a brownie missing a bit in the other. He chewed on his mouthful a bit longer before swallowing and grinning. I'm back. You monster! Ruby wailed in despair and popped out her seat, enraged at his devious action. It was gonna be a huge surprise to have you back here, and you ruined it by snatching up my snacks. She fell to her knees and slumped down. How could you? I'm sorry, but this is the first solid food I could eat in the last week. He tossed them into his mouth despite Ruby's protest and chewed them up with a big smile on his face. I couldn't resist them. Resist! He finished them off, and Ruby fell to her knees in defeat, ignoring the despairing young team leader. Naruto stuttered around the table and plopped down beside Kiba. The partners greeted each other with jabs of the elbows as Blake observed. You're weirdly spry for someone just getting back from the hospital. Making up for lost time. So how's it feel? Yang asked with a smirk. Must be nice to get fresh air again, huh? He was in the hospital, not a prison. But oddly enough, didn't feel much different. Naruto noted before grinning and stretching out his arms. But I'm glad to be walking on my own 2 feet again. I'd feel better if I got to get a workout again and fight in the spars. But his smile fell into an annoyed frown, and he propped his head up with his hands. Professor Goodwitch sort of made it painfully clear I'm not allowed to participate for a while. Until your physical therapy is finished, Tenten asked. Naruto hummed. Probably won't be until after the break. Well, then you and Sasuke are sharing that status for a while. Naruto looked over at his friend after Kiba had said that. Obviously, the injuries riddling his hands were still healing, and Sasuke had to ease into using them properly. If it was just flesh wounds, then he would have recovered by now. But it was a mixture of burns, piercings, and bent bones that plagued Sasuke's recovery, and then an especially difficult period of waiting for a swordsman like him. So, how about we move on from the awkwardness and devious planning? Devious plan? What did I miss? What's everyone doing over the break? Any plans? We're going back home to see our dad, Ruby said cheerfully before nervously scratching her head. He's been really worried about us recently. Pfft. Yang scoffed at the sheer size of that understatement. After what happened with the Uchiha, their father might as well have jumped from Patch to Vel to get here as fast as he did. He was doting, panicked, perturbed. Every word in the dictionary that matched him worrying about them. The moment they met with him, he even marched into Osman's office to get an explanation of how he let something like this happen. They were able to calm him down before he went full president of the PTA on the headmaster. Fortunately, It looked like Osprey had become accustomed to those random outbursts from concerned parents, so he immediately sat there and took Taeyang's tirade. For most parents, they understood the dangers of what happened when you send your children to a school like this. Then again, most cases didn't involve kidnapping by unknown intruders that held them captive until they broke out and fought their way free. Ruby chuckled nervously before nodding. Yeah, so we're gonna go back to Patch and stay with him for a while. I'm heading back to Mistral to see my dad too, Tin said with an eager smile. I can't wait to get back home. My house is gonna be so loud when I get back home. John groaned and palmed his face. They're gonna ask so many questions about the scar and everything. Ugh, it's gonna take forever to get them off my back. Well, we aren't going anywhere. Nora snaked an arm around Ren's shoulders and grinned. We'll be here to make sure everything's perfectly while you're gone. We'll use up your hot water. Eat any snacks you might have hidden away so they won't go bad. And we'll give all the Riben students a food poisoning to weaken the competition. And we'll do it because we're all such good friends. She shrugged and laughed. Also, we don't have a home to go to anyway, but mostly all that other stuff first. Kiba laughed. It's gonna be good to see Kamara again and the others again. Ruby jumped out of her seat with excitement. Take pictures. I want to come back to a flood of cute little snapshots of his face. Yeah, okay. Awesome. Ruby pumped her fist in victory before looking over the table. Weiss, what are you doing over the break? If you're bored, we can totally... She was cut off as Weiss stood out of her seat and all eyes turned on her. She looked like she was fighting the urge to say something before her head snapped towards Ruby. She quickly noticed the glare in her blue eyes before she sighed and made for the exit. I'm done eating. Weiss? Ruby started stepping out of her seat and went to follow before looking back and waving them goodbye. See you guys later. Weiss, wait. The speedy hooded girl dashed across the room and after her friend. As usual, Ruby's attempt to halt her partner retreated ended without any positive result, except until every other time. As she wasn't walking away out of boredom or disinterest. She was leaving because she couldn't stand sitting there close to him. Sasuke stood out of his seat and walked towards another exit. He didn't even say goodbye as he just laid his hands in his pockets and silently moved on. Naruto's expression fell after watching them leave, and he looked around at the twisted, awkward looks on all their faces as well. Yang coughed and forced to shake his mouth. She's adjusting. I'm sure she'll come around. Naruto closed his eyes and muttered, I don't think so. I know this is weird and everything, and Nora leaned over the table and to get closer as she looked at Naruto curiously. But Naruto, you think you can wear some platform heels and act as a distraction to catch Glinda's attention? Maybe. I'll mark that as a yes. She flicked her scroll and nodded proudly. It's all coming together. Hunting. Come on, I'm almost done with the last lab. You can do it. Yeah, come on, Naruto, we're almost done. Our sweet relief is just a few feet away. You know, it's hard to take you seriously when you're outpacing me while running backwards. The hooded girl flinched under his scrutiny before spinning around and running around him, alongside him. She was obviously slowing down to keep at his pace, but he still found comfort in her encouragement. A few more feet, and they finally passed the threshold. Though it had provided with her position, she stopped the clock on her scroll and clapped happily. Naruto propped himself on his knees and took deep, greedy breaths of air while she ran over to their side. Great job! You cleared five laps like it was nothing. Way to go! Naruto felt the sweat on his brow get absorbed by his bandana, but he still wiped his face before standing up. What was my time? Velvet cradled her scroll tight and started shyly. Well, it's better to focus on how you're feeling after doing all that. And do you feel wheezy or... Velvet? Naruto said her name with a stern glare. Don't hide it. Let me see. The rabbit hung her head before showing him the time. He and Ruby looked at the screen and he instantly felt like he had been slapped. He stood up and palmed his face, groaning as loud as he could. I could have half that time before the hospital. I knew I was getting slower with each lap, but... Shit, you were getting slower. I had no idea. Ruby asked with honest surprise. She probably hadn't noticed that he was going slower while running beside him, just making sure to run alongside him and not taking any notice of the speed they were going. For her, it was probably all the same. Whether it was his starting speed or ending speed, it was probably all just snail pace for this speedster. Naruto scoffed. Well, of course you didn't notice, he said with a fair bit of sarcasm as he smirked down at the short girl. I bet we all look like statues when you run full speed. You could probably clear all 5 laps and they waved for him to continue. See, you didn't even have to snap. You probably already finished before I even moved him. I'm not that fast. She was trying to be modest, but the bashful smile and blush at his compliment betrayed her intentions. I mean, I'm fast, but you're just stupid and ew. A well-placed flick of the to the nose brought Ruby's back to reality. She covered her personality and pounded up at him as he chuckled. He clapped his cheeks and started pouncing on his feet. Okay, maybe a few more laps will get the rust off. What? Velvet nearly shrieked and shook her head. This was supposed to be your physical therapy, and you're obviously tired. Don't push yourself. It's fine. He rotated his neck and stretched out his legs. I'm pretty sure I can go a few more laps. Just check the time, man. Velvet stood in front of him and put her foot down. Naruto was surprised by the firm look in her eyes that contracted the usually timid or happy tint they had. She put her hands on her hips and spoke fiercely. This isn't training. You are healing. You might still have energy to spare, but you can't keep pushing a healing body like that. You've done more than enough today, and you should be proud of that. Now promise me you'll stop and rest for now. She pointed at his face and pouted. Promise? Ruby and Naruto shared a look of surprise before he nodded. Okay, I promise I'll stop for today. She beamed a content smile as he breathed a sigh of relief. Velvet was actually really scary, Ruby noted with a drop of sweat running down her cheeks. She totally acted like a scary upperclassman, all stern and bossy. It was like getting called out by Wise, but without a soul-crushing despair. I know, Naruto agreed. It's even scarier because of how much taller she is than us. Huh? Velvet blinked confusion before looking up at Naruto and correcting his mistake. Wait, Naruto, you're much taller than I am. How could you think? Her eyes rolled up to catch the briefest glimpses of the ears on her head before she shied back and mumbled under her breath. She looked up at the cheeky smile over his face and grumbled, That's not funny. It kind of was. Her mean glower vanished after a moment before she just sighed and accepted his teasing. She smiled. I'll meet you again for tutoring, right? You bet. Can I join you guys sometime? The youngest team asked. If I needed to cram, I'd rather it'd be with you guys. Sure, that sounds like fun. I bet Coco and the others would love to meet you. Velvet stopped for a moment to look at Naruto. He noticed her glance and looked back at her before her eyes trailed up and stopped above him. He quickly realized what she was looking at and felt a cold pinch in his stomach. Velvet shook her head before taking a step back. Hey, you two! She pulled out a brown and yellow camera from behind and turned it on before flashing a smile. Why don't I take a picture to commemorate your arrival back? Hey, that sounds like fun. Ruby smiled up at him. You want to try? Naruto just shrugged and they stood together as Velvet started readying her camera. Once her preparations were complete, the two first years flashed big smiles and waved to the camera as it flashed when it was done. Velvet waved them goodbye and made her way back to the main building. You can go on back to your room if you want. Naruto told his younger friend as he started making his way to the locker room. I need to check something first. It's cool. I can waste some time just hanging out with you. Ruby giggled and shrugged her shoulders. What else would I do and study for the finals? Well said. The two made their way along the lockers before stopping at Naruto's. He punched in the code as Ruby started balancing on one foot and wait. So, what are you doing anyways? I haven't gotten a chance to see my weapons since I got back. Thought I might as well get a quick check on inventory. He pulled it open to see his weapons hung and propped in their proper positions before he smiled. Guess I should be thankful you still remember my passcode, huh? I know, right? Ruby furiously nodded in agreement before crossing her arm with huff. After what happened with that guy, Wilster, Weiss was all like, I don't want you to know my locker combination. I don't care what kind of situation we're in. I'm getting it changed right now. Like it was some big deal. Ruby shrugged. I mean, I know her new code too, but I think I'm gonna keep that to myself. Smart. He looked back in his locker and couldn't stop the groan that echoed from his throat. The three of his blades laid on the bottom of the locker in shattered messes. The two of them were broken to the hilt, while the third hilt was shattered black. He already knew it was the case, but seeing it again really affirmed just how much it sucked up. He kept his short blades in sheaths that carried two at a time, which meant now he had a useless sheath and a half-empty one to carry around. Fantastic. He quickly noticed his hidden blade among the pile, cutty and stabby. Now these two had literally saved his life. The last thing he remembered before falling completely unconscious was catching Itachi off guard and stabbing his abdomen. It was probably gonna take some time for the Chica to recover from his injury too. Good. The blonde faunus quickly looked over the confines of his locker to try and spot what he was looking for. He did and quickly grabbed one of the short blades from its dual sheath. He took it over, turned it around in his hand before sighing in relief. Thank God. That's one different. That one's different, right? Ruby noticed as she came to his side. She looked up at him before she pointed at the hilt. The grip looks like it's been fixed more often than the other blades. Is this one special? It was my first blade. Naruto looked down at it fondly and spun it around his palm like it was second nature. Ruby watched as he deftly twirled it with precision before it came to a stark halt in his grasp. My dad gave it to me when we started training. No matter where I go, what I do, I make sure I at least have this with me. Oh, that's cool. Ruby marveled before sighing and hanging her head in shame. All the weapons I trained with when I started broke. All I have left is Crescent Rose. She blinked before looking up at him. Hey, does this one have a name? I mean, I know it's part of the other Kathleen set, but if it was your first weapon, it should have a special name, right? I guess, yeah. He looked it over before returning it to his sheath and shrugging. Do you want to choose it? Can I? Sure. Just put more effort into it than those team names you made before. Like, a lot more effort. Hey, Ruby puffed out her cheeks and crossed her arms. I changed those names, and they're way cooler now. And just to show you how good I am at making names, I'll give that one an awesome one. I'm waiting. In time. Ruby mumbled. I need time to think. Fine. Naruto turned back to his locker. I'll leave the artist to her work. He bent down and started taking inventory of the arrows he still had locked. He opened the compartments in the bottom of the hill to find they were either low or completely empty. He had to start restocking soon. Naruto? Yeah, can I feel free to stay no if you want, but can I ask you something? He wasn't sure he wanted to hear this, especially with how she struggled to come out with it. I was just wondering, and remember, you don't have to answer, but why are you still wearing your bandana? Yep, he noticed their look, so when he came back in the cafeteria, the first thing he saw was all of them taking notice of the cloth covering his hair, and more importantly, his ears. Well, most of them. Sasuke was still out of it, and why she didn't even bother looking. Velvet looked too, no matter how discreet or quickly she played it. I mean, if it's just a fashion statement, then I totally get it, really. I mean, I'm taking the fashion world by storm with my hood, so if that's the reason. There's a lot of reasons I wore it. He cut her off, and Ruby's mouth shut tight despite him not even responding in a sharp or annoyed tone. He just sounded frank as he started rifling his weapons. So people didn't give me any weird looks, so that people wouldn't bother us with questions like why an Uchiha and a Faunus are working together, so I could stay even a little bit hidden from the Uchiha and White Faunus. There were a lot of reasons I justified wearing this thing, but now I think I'm just wearing it because I'm ashamed of being a Faunus, of myself, I guess. He also wore it because in some way he thought he could feel like he did before this whole mess came down on him. Just a kid at Beacon aiming for his goal. Now he was a kid at Beacon, and he felt. Naruto stood up and stared down at the floor before speaking. Ruby, I don't think I can say sorry anymore. I can't find it in myself to apologize anymore. What do you mean? Ruby asked with reservation, asking any further. She looked at his back before swallowing the lump in her throat. Naruto, do you not feel sorry? Of course I do. He stopped her and quickly corrected the misunderstanding. I feel sorry. I never forgot what I did, but I've felt guilty about it for years. I've tried to make up for it and apologize however I can. I'm here because I want to help people now instead, but... His eyes became heavy as he held his stomach. The guilt doesn't leave. How can I be sorry for what I've done when I know it's not going to make me feel any better? Ruby was silent after being asked such a loaded question, and could only stand there in silence with him. She looked back up to see him still staring down at the ground before she spoke again. I don't know. I'm sorry, Naruto. It's fine. He lowered his hand before a dry mocking chuckle escaped his lips. I don't know what kind of answer I was expecting. He shut the door before slumping back into it and letting his shoulders sag. Sorry for putting you in that situation. It's fine. Ruby stepped forward. Naruto, I know it seems really hard right now, and even Waisa, she stopped and took a moment to think about what she could say to cheer him up. She's just reacting to this a little badly, but she didn't like me very much when we started, but look at us now. Just give her some time. There was hope in her voice that her friends would get along again. As she nodded, I know you and her can talk again if we give her some time. He didn't have the heart to tell her Wise had already made up her mind. Ruby apparently didn't know what the topic of conversation was between them when the young snake came to visit the hospital. hospital. She might not have even known that Weiss made a trip at all. He didn't want to tell her because he knew she'd march up to Weiss and beg her to reconsider, which would only piss Weiss off more, and then it'd bring Yang and Blake into the argument too. He didn't want to see Ruby like that. Why are you still trying to help me? Because you are my friend. But you saw the photo. Yes, I did, and it was scary. And I'm also wanting you right now, and you all look scared, and you look, and I'm also watching you right now, and you look scared and frightened and sad, and I'm worried about you. Ruby looked at him with firm eyes. No matter what, I know you're my friend, and I'm helping you because I know you do the same for me. Naruto was speechless after hearing her say that. His eyes narrowed, and he looked up in time to see her reach out and grab his hand. She squeezed it and nodded. It'll be okay. He didn't deny it. He could have, but he didn't want to. Not right now. Thank you. Hunting, Naruto made his way back to his room. He told Ruby to go on ahead while he reloaded his blades. Now he was making the trek back to his dorm to call it a day. He could feel parts of his clothes sticking to him from the sweat. He really wanted to wash off. He swept his scroll and opened the door. He was looking forward to coming back after the extended time after his... The moment he walked in, he swore he felt the tension slam square into his chest. He stepped in to see Kiba standing by his bed and Tenten sitting on the side of hers, anxiously watching him come to the door. He saw Sasuke on his bed as well, concern in his eyes when he looked up at him. Naruto turned back to Kiba and Tenten. We need to talk. Naruto felt his stomach go cold as he closed the door and stepped in further. He walked up to the end of his bed, looked between his teammates' expression before facing Kiba and Tenten. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you. We knew you would say that. We knew. Kiba nodded, sounding much more even and level-headed than he did the last time he confronted him like this about Wilkes. But we don't know anymore what you can't tell us or just won't tell us. Naruto's eyes narrowed so slightly. What does that mean? You know what it means. Kiba clarified as he stepped away from his bed and over to Tenten's side. The bun-haired girl still looked conflicted about what was going on, so Kiba continued. You didn't tell us about being thieves or working with Wilkes. I knew you were honest and we figured it out, but you had tried to keep that a secret. And this, there may have been a chance that one day further down the line you would have told us that you were in the White Fang. He looked over at Sasuke, and you were a part of a group that was fighting and killing them, and that you were trying to kill each other. You may have told us one day, or maybe you wouldn't, but that doesn't matter because we know now, but only after this happened. Kiba looked between the two of them and spoke with an eerie calmness. We can't go on like this. We can't go the rest of our time. Hell, we can't do the next semester like this if you keep hiding things from us and keeping secrets from us. Kiba, there can't be any more excuses. Not after what happened. He stepped forward. It wasn't just us that got caught in it, but everyone else. We were all involved in this matter. We can't be blindsided like that anymore. We need you both to tell us anything else like this. Naruto paused and attempted to make sense of the thoughts clouding his mind. I can't. We can't. Sasuke finally spoke up and stood from his bed. They all turned to him as the tired Uchiha spoke. We understand what you mean, but we don't want to bring up the past anymore. We just want to move on. You say that, Kiba retorted with a frown, but right now it looks like you're both letting the past control you, making you scared and stopping you from even talking. Please, and can't we just... No, we can't just move on. They were taken aback from the sudden yell and looked to see Tenten had jumped from her bed with a pant. Her eyes started to water as she shook her head. How can you two still say something like that after everything that happened, even if it's painful to remember? Do you have any idea how hard it is to worry that you might suffer or get hurt again? Her eyes focused on Naruto, and he noticed how tears had started to spill from them. We thought you were gonna die. We went to that hospital and we heard about your injuries and we were expecting the worst. And Sasuke, her voice cracked as she cried, and you didn't say a word to us. We thought we had lost you. You were hurt and you needed help, but you didn't come to us. Tenten's tears fell unbidden down her cheek as she threw her arms down. If something like this happened again, and you were both, because we didn't know. Tenten covered her mouth and tried to control her sobs before she sat back down on her bed. Naruto and Sasuke both looked on in horror at the state they had left their friend in. Kiba watched Tenten slightly before he turned back to them. Naruto, Sasuke, you're our partners, our teammates, we're friends, and we know, despite everything that's happened, that you're good inside, but we keep realizing we know less and less about who you both really are. We see you now, and we realize you're still just strangers to us. Naruto was silent, hearing his partner say that hit him harder than he could believe. The disappointment look on Kiba's face and Tenten's red eyes while she stopped crying just hammered in how nauseous that statement had left him. He saw Sasuke walk back to his bed while he just stood there in silence, hearing the people he had trusted so much tell him he was still a stranger, hurt like a knife. But he knew they were completely right. He couldn't call himself their friend or leader while he still hid secrets and information from them, but he knew they'd never look at him again if he told them everything. This was the result of their secrecy. This was the result of trying to keep their secrets and lying to their friends. This was what broke Team Noctex. Kiba finally made a move and stepped over to drop in his bed and stare at the ceiling. Tenten continued to catch her breath while Sasuke just lay on his sheets. Naruto couldn't find it in himself to say anything else after that argument and made his way to the shower. At least he could wash off some of the sweat and dirt. That might just make him feel better, maybe just a little. Naruto turned on the water and let it run until it started getting hotter. He waited and pulled his bandana off to let his fox ears free. They twitched and relaxed, being freed from their confines as Naruto ran a hand through his hair. He sighed and pulled his shirt off before pausing and looking into the mirror. From the reflection, he could see the scars that now marked his body after his fight with Itachi. A pair of rigid, piercing scars on his shoulder, abdomen, and one on his thigh from where the sheet metal covered in ice had hit him, and the long, jagged scar that ran over his stomach from where Itachi had sliced him before freezing the wound. It was because of the ice that the wound didn't seal properly, and only after he got to the hospital were they able to sew it up. Without his order to patch him together, the wound stayed like that for a while before it got back to work. Apparently, it was long enough to leave a scar by the natural process. It was a reminder just how close he was to dying, how close he was to paying for his crimes. Shouldn't he have paid for them? Wasn't it better that he got away? He was still a good person. Weiss didn't think so. What about the others? Did they still trust him, or did they barely stomach looking at him anymore? He was right. He can't know the truth. Tenten cried because of them. She'd be sinking knowing why he did it in the first place. They would understand. They'd hate him. He had his reasons. He hated himself. He was trying to do something good, to correct all the wrong things he had done. What about his father? Was he doing him a favor by never calling or contacting him, by staying here and putting him through more worry? Was that to help him, or was he just being selfish? Was this all because he was selfish? Did he deserve to be here? Did he deserve a second chance? Better men never got what he got, so why does he get to try again? Why did he keep screwing up? Why was he couldn't breathe, hyperventilating the mirror? It was all foggy. The heat was getting to him. His stomach hurt. Did his wound reopen? Why was this happening? Why did he do this? Why? I'm sorry. Naruto burst out of the bathroom as steam flooded out. He fell to the ground and gasped for air as his team jumped to their feet. Naruto! My stomach. Naruto grabbed his wound and cradled it as he tried to breathe again. It's open. Let me see. He couldn't recognize whose voice that was as someone grabbed his stomach and tried to pull them back. No, he resisted. If they did, the wound would get worse, and blood is not open. What? You're not bleeding. You're just panicking. Breathe. Naruto gasped and struggled with the demand before he started taking slower, longer breaths. The sight started to darken from the white background it had become to see his teammates huddled over him. They looked down at him in concern before he heard Tenten ask him, "Are those from the fight?" His head fell back into the ground and he cursed himself. Damn it. He just wanted things to be right again, but now he realized he didn't know what that meant anymore. Extra across the pond. And remember that when you arrive, you will be representing not only Haven, but all of Mistral. And even if you choose not to participate in the tournament, remember to abide by the rules when you arrive in Vale. This is one of the greatest honors you as students can experience during your time at Haven, and I expect the best from all of you. Thank you, and enjoy your time at the Vital Festival. Well, that was fun, but we still don't know what we're supposed to do for like the whole week of we have before leaving for Vale. A tall, blue-haired boy stated while he and his team made their way back to their room. Seriously, a little clarification would be nice. Stop worrying. His tall green-haired teammate attempted to sedate his friend's panic. They'll probably just send us a notification or something. You know worrying like that makes you look really uncool, right? Who's worrying? I'm not worrying. He immediately fixed his expression to a nonchalant calmness while fixing the goggles on his head. I'm fine, totally fine. Cool as a cool thing, I guess. That's the spirit. The red-haired member of the trio nodded before looking back. You should focus on the more important things, like the fact we're taking a plane rather than a boat, and that the plane will still be flying over the ocean while we make it to Vale, and other oceans-related things. Don't even joke about that, man. Okay, the red-head shrugged before looking up and thought, I need to think about what I'm gonna pack, clothes, weapons, my favorite toothbrush. Neptune, why don't you contact Sun, see when he's getting back from visiting his family? The blue-haired boy came out of his terrified little reality imagining the ocean before nodding rapidly. Yeah, good idea. He pulled out his scroll and started typing again to his partner. He waited for a response before his eyes widened. Uh-oh. What? Uh-oh. Sun texted, I'll see you in Beacon. What does he mean by that? Oh God. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away. Hey, what do you think Vale is like? Well, it's probably like Vacuo, just less sand. We should definitely try out some of their stores when we get there. I want to see what beach kids wear all the time when they don't have to worry about sunstroke and sunburns. Have you seen the Reddit post on Beacon yet? And there are a bunch of posts on the rookie teams and people that are going to join the tournament. Did you hear about these Dirty Dozen from Beacon? Octavia, get off the scroll. You're gonna trip getting on the boat, and we're gonna have to pull you out of the ocean. Okay, well, how about this hottest student thread? A golden blur passed the waiting Vacuo students and made its way to the pier of boats. He waited with bated breath as the dock workers started stocking up the boats with as many supplies as they could. Okay, I think that's it for this one. Close it up. It was just for a moment, just a small turn away from the boat to get some help from the other hands, but it was enough for him to dash into the boat's storage. When the door closed behind him, the blonde teen pumped his fist and yelled in a hushed voice, Victory! Sun Wukong, Phonics Extraordinaire, leader of Team Sun and Stowaway. Vale, here I come. And trapped in a dark space of the boat storage with the food and the supplies, no companions, and a dying scroll. I regret this decision. End of chapter 40.